Hello, and welcome to the My Heart and Mind podcast, where it's all about creating the feel-good mindset so you can make the most of every moment and reap the benefits of getting the most happiness out of life. And now, over to your host, Sally Crawley.
My show is for you if you've had a heart attack, heart surgery, a cardiac arrest, or your life has been impacted by a cardiac diagnosis. It's all about mastering your thoughts and feelings and emotions so you can feel great and live a life that you love despite your diagnosis. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just before we get into the show though, please be aware that my work is not intended to replace conventional medicine. It is complementary. If you have any concerns about your health or your heart, then do seek medical expert advice immediately. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Today's episode is a relaxation, and it focuses on taking charge of your feelings. If you don't know what a relaxation is, then you may want to go back and listen to episode 22 called Relaxations Explained, the Big Calm and the Feel Good Factor. I'll link to this in the show notes. So let's begin. The Dalai Lama said, "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional." To me, this quote means that experiencing pain, physical or emotional, is a natural and unavoidable part of life. But whether or not we experience suffering as a result of that pain is a choice that we can make. In other words, we can choose to let the pain control and consume us, causing more suffering, or we can choose to accept the pain and manage it in a healthy and constructive way. Managing how we feel and react to people, circumstances and situations can reduce our suffering. You are in charge of how you feel. I'm sure you're familiar with the term, you choose how you react. Actually, it's not 100% true, as our limbic system is always on the lookout for trouble and anything that would be a threat. So you may initially experience a fight or flight response. However, you can stop, take a breath or two, and calmly reconsider your response. There may be some facts that you weren't aware of, and therefore take charge of how you feel. Another way to take control of how you feel is called reframing. Reframing is a powerful tool that can help you shift your perspective and change the way you feel about a situation. It's a technique where you reinterpret a situation in a different way, so you can see it in a more positive light. This can be especially useful when you're facing challenges or difficulties that are causing you stress, anxiety or frustration. By changing the way you view a situation, you can change the way that you feel about it. For example, a simple way to reframe a situation is to focus on what you have rather than what you lack. If you're feeling discouraged because you're not where you want to be in your cardiac recovery, you can reframe this by focusing on what you've already accomplished so far and what you can do to get you to where you want to go. Reframing can also help you cultivate a more optimistic outlook. By looking at a situation in a positive light, you can boost your confidence and feel more empowered. It's important to remember that reframing is a process, and it may take time for you to get used to. You may need to experiment with different ways of reframing before you find what works best. You may also need to practice reframing regularly in order to make it a habit. I'll talk more about reframing in another episode so you get a full understanding then. And it's at this point I need to remind you not to listen to any more of this episode while you're driving. The same applies if you're operating machinery or involved in something that needs your full attention. It's best only to listen to this when you have time, somewhere where you can safely relax completely and are unlikely to be disturbed. As you are drifting, dreaming, dropping, falling, you can perhaps now or in a moment allow your memories to float back to a time that time where you believed that everything and anything is possible. Perhaps you'll experience a clear moment in pictures. Maybe you'll hear sound, or maybe just have a sense of that time and being you, and that's okay. Re-experiencing that memory, remembering those thoughts, recalling the feeling, the sensation, and the knowing that you do know how it feels to believe that I am in charge of how I feel. Yes, you are. You can repeat this phrase to yourself in your own mind each time you hear me say it today. And after today, you can say it to yourself over and over again, repeating it out loud to yourself or in your mind every day, many times a day over the coming week. As you say to yourself, I am in charge of how I feel. Practice connecting the feelings and the words that you're saying as you go through your everyday. Imagine how it feels to really own that belief. Remember those times when you've known, I am in charge of how I feel. You alone decide how you feel. You have the option of experiencing any emotion you choose. You can choose to feel happy or sad, excited or bored, hopeful or hopeless. Your feelings are under your control. You choose how to react to situations, people and events by noticing the thoughts you say to yourself. Other people lack the power to affect your emotion. You can choose how you wish to respond to whatever they say or do. You remember that you are the one who is in charge. I am in charge of how I feel. When you feel down, you can change that feeling as you see fit. You can turn any negative emotion into a positive emotion just by the way you think about it. You can turn sadness into happiness. You can turn anxiety into comfort. You can move from fear to fearlessness. You can do all this because you are a master at controlling your emotion. I am in charge of how I feel. You can choose your thoughts about something that gives you control over how you feel. Deciding how you're going to feel and making that feeling a reality is a skill. You are constantly improving this skill. With each passing day, you have greater control over your emotion. You're developing a greater ability to choose useful emotions and reject those that are useless. You decide what emotion is most advantageous and experience that emotion. You do this by using your thoughts. You control your thoughts. Your thoughts do not control you. I am in charge of how I feel. When an emotion fails to serve you, you reject it. You change your thoughts about the situation or the circumstances. You decide how you want to feel. Today, you take responsibility for your emotion. You choose to control your emotions and make them work for you rather than against you. I am in charge of how I feel. That's right. In a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5, and at the count of 5 and not before, you'll open your eyes only as quickly as is comfortable for you. 1, 2, 3, halfway there, beginning to wiggle your toes. 4, eyelids beginning to flutter. And 5, coming back into the room, all the way back, bringing everything that you've learnt today with you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. You may want to have a yawn or a stretch, and that's okay. So here are your affirmations from today's relaxation. First, I am in charge of how I feel. Second, I choose thoughts that give me control of how I feel. And thirdly, I decide how I want to feel. So as usual, I want you to say the affirmations 5 times each as a set and repeat your set at least once a day. And for those of you that want to do a little bit more homework and a little bit of self-reflection, here's some questions for you. 1. In what situations do my emotions work against me? 2. When I lose control of my emotions, what happens? And 3. How would my life be changed if I had more control over my emotions? Don't worry about writing them all down. You'll be able to find them in the show notes and on my website. Thanks for listening. See you again soon. Thank you for listening today. It means a lot to me. I hope you got at least one takeaway from this episode. And if you're interested, you can find the show notes and any links that I've mentioned on my website. It's www.myheartandmind.co.uk/podcast. And finally, I just want to remind you, you are loved more than you will ever know. You are admired by more people than you'd ever expect. And you are worthy of joy and happiness.
You've been listening to Sally Crawley and the My Heart and Mind podcast, a show for you if you've had a heart attack, cardiac event, or other life-changing experience and want to feel good. It's all about mastering your feelings and emotions so you can feel great and live the life you love. To find out more, visit www.myheartandmind.co.uk and note that that's an AND and not the ampersand character. Go be magnificent.